It's hard to believe that one of the strongest men in the world started life with a weak and sickly body, but that's exactly the story of Earl Maynard. Born on November 28, 1935 in Barbados, he grew up on a small island with limited resources, facing challenges that tested his strength from an early age, not in sports, but just to stay alive. As a kid and teenager, Earl constantly battled respiratory problems like bronchitis and pneumonia. He'd miss school and skip sports all the time because he was too sick. In his own words, "If something was going around, I caught it." But instead of accepting that as his fate, he decided to fight back. That's when he discovered the power of weight training, not to compete, but simply to survive. At 17, he stood about 5 feet 10 inches, 1.78 meters, and weighed just 119 pounds, 54 kilograms. He was skinny, weak, and constantly exhausted. Still, something inside him refused to accept that version of himself. So he walked into a local gym, and that decision changed the course of his life. His only goal was to boost his immune system and feel more alive. He had no idea what was coming next. For 9 months straight, Earl stuck to a strict routine, about an hour and a half of training, 4 times a week. He had no coach, no sponsor, no fancy diet. Just him, his determination, and the rusty weights at the gym. Slowly, his body began to respond. His muscles grew, his health improved, and the fragile kid turned into a strong, confident young man. That physical transformation had a massive impact on Earl's mindset and spirit. For the first time, he felt like he had control over his own destiny. Training became his escape, his safe space, his passion. More than just building muscle, he was gaining freedom. The freedom to be whoever he wanted to be, even someone nobody ever expected him to become. This new lifestyle eventually led him, without any big expectations, to enter his first competition, Mr. Junior Barbados. To his surprise, he won. From there came more local contests, more victories, and people started to notice him. The same guy who used to be invisible because of his physical weakness was now the center of attention for his strength and determination. Have you ever thought about how many people give up on their dreams because of their physical limits? Earl Maynard proves that even when everything seems to point to weakness, it's still possible to rewrite your story. But Earl's desire to grow wasn't just physical. He wanted to expand his mind and career too. In the late 1950s, he made one of the boldest moves of his life. He left Barbados and moved to England. Cold weather, unfamiliar culture, a brand new life. He went all in. His original plan was to study physical therapy, but fate had something else in store. While attending classes in London, Earl never stopped training. He spent most of his free time in local gyms, refining his technique, learning from other lifters, and putting on serious muscle. Around that time, he discovered a magazine called Health and Strength, hugely popular among bodybuilders back then. They ran mail-in competitions, and he decided to go for it. To enter, contestants had to mail in magazine coupons along with their photos. Earl didn't have much money, so he had to save up just to buy each monthly issue, but he never gave up. He entered 3 competitions in a row, and shockingly, won all of them. His physique stood out for its definition, symmetry, and above all, the insane transformation from the sickly boy he used to be. Those wins opened the door to European bodybuilding stages. In 1960, he entered Mr. London and won it decisively. But his most historic moment came shortly after. He became the first non-white man to win Mr. England, breaking a major racial barrier at a time when institutional racism was still the norm in many parts of the world. That victory wasn't just his. It was a win for an entire generation that saw in him a symbol of perseverance and equality. The bodybuilding world took notice, and so did the media. Earl, who had once been a quiet dreamer with no spotlight, was now being seen as a serious contender on the global stage. But more importantly, he was proving that talent and hard work have no color and no nationality. His journey inspired countless young black athletes to believe that they, too, could reach the top, even in a sport that had long been dominated by white competitors. With all these achievements, Maynard had truly carved out his identity as an athlete. The skinny kid from Barbados was now a respected champion. a symbol of strength and representation. And he wasn't planning on stopping anytime soon. Those early victories were just a launch pad for bigger challenges waiting beyond the borders of England, and he was more than ready. After making history on British stages, Earl Maynard set his sights on the toughest bodybuilding competitions in the world. His ambition knew no bounds, and he knew it was time to go up against the best athletes on the planet. So, during the 60s and 70s, his name started popping up among the legends of the sport, and it didn't take long before he became one of them. In 1964, Earl hit a major milestone by winning the NABBA Mr. Universe, taking home both the tall class and the overall title, the highest honor of the night. The very next year, he did it again, this time with the IFBB, proving his dominance across different federations. Back then, winning titles in both organizations was rare and highly respected, cementing his global reputation. But the recognition didn't stop there. In 1965, Earl competed in the prestigious Mr. Olympia and placed third in what was, and still is, the most competitive bodybuilding stage in the world. That result hits even harder when you realize he was sharing the stage with legends like Larry Scott, the very first Mr. Olympia. Being in the top 3 globally was solid proof that Maynard had reached the peak of his career. Even with all the titles under his belt, he didn't let time slow him down. Throughout the 1970s, with a long career already behind him, he kept showing up on stage. In both 1977 and 1978, he competed in the Masters Mr. America, AU, and won the overall title both years. His consistency across decades was proof of real dedication, and that his love for bodybuilding was anything but temporary. Earl stood out not just for his muscle size, but for his aesthetics. His flawless symmetry, sharp definition, and confident stage presence made him a complete package. He often posed with a calm, composed vibe, radiating control with every move, like the stage was just an extension of himself. But beyond the technique, he represented something bigger: diversity and perseverance. A black bodybuilder from a tiny Caribbean island dominating the biggest stages in the world, at a time when opportunities weren't exactly equal. His success broke barriers and sent a clear message: talent finds the top, even when it starts far from it. While he wowed the world with his sculpted physique and stage grace, Earl Maynard was also building a second, unexpected career: professional wrestling. For most people, juggling 2 demanding careers would be impossible, but for him, it was just another way to push his limits. The strength he built in the gym followed him into the ring, where he made history once again. His wrestling journey kicked off in a pretty unexpected place, while serving in the Royal Air Force in Cyprus. With few resources, he improvised workouts using whatever he could find. During that time, a British promoter on vacation saw him in action and was blown away. That meeting opened the door for Earl to transition into professional wrestling, and not long after, he was brought to the United States by the influential Gus Karras. In the US, Maynard started performing with some of the biggest wrestling promotions of the era, including NWA, AWA, WWF, which would later become WWE, and Canada's Stampede Wrestling. It was a whole new world where charisma and showmanship mattered just as much as brute strength. But Earl didn't struggle to adapt. His athletic build and stage presence from bodybuilding made him a natural in the ring. His nickname in the wrestling world was simple but powerful: Mr. Universe, a nod to his bodybuilding titles, now with a whole new meaning in the ring. And he lived up to the name. Over the course of his wrestling career, he won the NWA America's Tag Team Championship 3 times and took home the NWA Beat the Champ Television Championship twice. Even in New Arena, Earl knew how to shine. One of the highlights of his time in the ring was teaming up with some of wrestling's biggest names. He shared the spotlight with legends like Rocky Johnson, father of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and Dory Dixon, one of his most frequent tag team partners. Together, they formed powerhouse duos that drew huge crowds and helped raise the profile of the sport in that era. More than victories, what really stood out about Earl was his versatility. He was a respected bodybuilder, a technical athlete, and a full-blown entertainer. He could go from a posing competition to a stage brawl with the same energy and commitment. That's what made him unique, a true multi-champion icon, both on and off the stage. Have you ever had to reinvent yourself? Change careers, start from scratch, or challenge yourself in a completely new field? Earl did exactly that, and he proved that real strength isn't just in the body, but in the courage to try something different. After dominating bodybuilding stages and wrestling rings, Earl Maynard set his sights on a new challenge, the big screen. For someone who'd already faced real-life opponents, playing villains on camera felt like a natural next step. With his commanding presence, sculpted muscles, and intense stare, he quickly became a familiar face in action films throughout the 70s and 80s. This new phase kicked off thanks to Maynard's own image. His physique placed him in a select group of actors who could convincingly play henchmen, warriors, bouncers, or fighters. But it wasn't just about looks. Earl surprised everyone with how adaptable he was on screen, and that opened the door to a lasting film career. He went on to appear in over 20 movies, many of which are now cult classics in the action genre. Some of his highlights include Truck Turner, 1974, starring Isaac Hayes and Black Belt Jones, 1974, which placed him right in the middle of the blaxploitation movement. His role in The Deep, 1977, gave him international exposure and solidified his image as a powerful screen presence. In 1980, Earl shared the screen with Jackie Chan in The Big Brawl, bringing together Western bodybuilding and Eastern martial arts in a clash of styles that actually worked. Audiences loved the mix. 2 years later, he played Morgan in The Sword and the Sorcerer, 1982, marking his final film role, a strong closing act to his movie career. During his time on screen, Earl had the chance to work with big names like Nick Nolte, Roger Moore, and the aforementioned Jackie Chan. Even when he wasn't the star, his presence was unforgettable. He brought raw strength with dignity to his roles, and his acting avoided stereotypes, balancing intensity with charisma. But more than fame or recognition, cinema gave Earl the chance to reinvent himself once again. Each new role was a reflection of everything he had already lived through: strength, perseverance, discipline, and adaptability. And by channeling those traits into art, he reached a new audience, many of whom had no idea about his past in sports. If acting had been a surprising discovery, Earl found even greater fulfillment when he stepped behind the camera. Over the years, he realized he didn't just want to bring other people's characters to life. He wanted to tell his own stories. That's how his passion for directing, producing, and screenwriting was born. A new chapter had begun, this time as a filmmaker. His directorial debut came in 2006 with the film Flight of the Mongoose, marking the start of a more personal, creative era. Earl now had a platform to share his ideas and life experiences in a deeper way. He wasn't just looking to entertain. He wanted to spark thought, honor his culture, and inspire people. That led to films like Deadly Calypso and Bajan Blue, the latter packed with emotion and soul. Bajan Blue tells the story of a British ex-soldier in crisis who, after a divorce and personal collapse, returns to Barbados and reconnects with his former mentor, played by Earl. Together, they start a journey of healing and redemption. Though fictional, the film reflects the real-life path of many who search for meaning and strength in hard times, something Earl deeply related to. Alongside his fictional work, Earl also poured himself into producing documentaries with strong cultural impact. In Slavery to Independence and Beyond, he traces the historical journey of Caribbean people, while Stalwarts of the Caribbean highlights alumni of Combermere School who became influential figures. For Earl, film was a powerful tool to preserve memory and uplift the identity of his people. Maynard also firmly believes in the power of film and media as a driver of tourism and a way to boost national pride. He's always said that Barbados has rich stories, homegrown talent, and cinematic landscapes that could easily put the country on the international filmmaking map, if only there were more institutional support. Even without big budgets, he built his own independent team and studio from the ground up. In his productions, Earl often works with young local talent, offering them space and guidance to grow. He's even collaborated with Cuban filmmakers and credits those experiences with leveling up the technical quality of his projects. For him, filmmaking isn't just about making movies, it's about leaving a legacy that lives on after he's gone. Despite having such a public career, Earl has always kept his personal life low-key, private and reserved. He prefers letting his achievements speak louder than his day-to-day routine. These days, he lives peacefully in Christchurch, Barbados, surrounded by calm, memories, and, most importantly, the family he cherishes. After all he's accomplished, that's where he's truly found home. Earl is married, the father of 4 daughters and 1 son, and sees his family as his greatest achievement. One of his daughters even followed in his fitness footsteps and now runs one of the top training centers in California. For Earl, watching his kids grow up with discipline, health, and purpose is more rewarding than any trophy or medal he's ever earned. Even in retirement, Earl still trains 4 times a week, keeping the same level of commitment that made him a legend. He has a private gym at home, where he can train without distractions and on his own schedule. These days, working out isn't about preparing for competition. It's a daily celebration of the life and health he fought so hard to build. His philosophy is simple: no shortcuts, no extremes, and no harmful substances. Earl believes that true success in fitness comes from respecting both the body and the mind. He promotes regular exercise, a balanced diet, and proper rest. In his view, the physical body is just an external reflection of something that starts within: discipline, self-respect, and a commitment to well-being. Earl also makes it a point to warn young athletes about the risks of chasing fast results at any cost. He knows that in today's world, the pressure for instant gains can push people towards steroids and dangerous habits. His advice is simple but powerful: take care of your health. It's worth more than any trophy. That's the foundation of everything he's built and still teaches. Even out of the spotlight, Maynard remains an active force in the community, constantly lifting others up. Whether he's training someone, attending events, or just talking with young athletes, he always brings a message of encouragement and balance. His role as a mentor might be stronger now than ever. Very few athletes manage to leave a legacy that crosses generations. Earl Maynard is one of those rare names that didn't just shine in his time. He continues to inspire people to this day. His life is marked by success in multiple arenas, but what truly sets him apart is the impact he's had on others, inside and outside the world of sports. Over the years, Maynard has received numerous honors recognizing his contributions to bodybuilding, wrestling, film, and Caribbean culture. In 2003, he was honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Barbados National Sports Awards, a national recognition of his multifaceted and exemplary career. It was a celebration not just of wins, but of character, resilience, and positive influence. In 2010, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame of Caribbean bodybuilders, cementing his legacy alongside other regional legends. That honor reinforced his status as a Caribbean trailblazer in sports historically dominated by athletes from other countries. He opened doors, broke barriers, and lifted Barbados's pride on the global stage. His presence has also been celebrated far beyond the Americas. Countries like Germany, South Korea, Israel, and Lebanon have recognized Earl with awards, special invitations, and appearances at international events. That global respect is a reflection of the legacy he's built through hard work, charm, and an inspiring life story. Among his most meaningful accolades is his induction into the England Athletics Hall of Fame, a reminder that his influence went far beyond bodybuilding. It was in England that he broke racial barriers and won historic competitions, and it's also where he became a symbol of equality, strength, and undeniable talent. But Earl Maynard's real legacy goes way beyond trophies and plaques. Today, he stands as a living symbol of perseverance, especially for young people from small communities with limited resources and big obstacles. His story sends a loud and clear message. You can get there too. And that kind of inspiration, you can't put a price on it. With such a long and multifaceted career, It was almost inevitable that some confusion would pop up about Earl Maynard's journey. But one mix-up in particular became pretty common and also pretty problematic. A number of online sources started spreading info about a supposed Earl Maynard born in 1953 in Jamaica, who supposedly competed in bodybuilding shows into the 1990s. But that story simply isn't true. The real Earl Maynard was born in 1935 in Barbados and made his mark on the bodybuilding world throughout the 1960s and 1970s. He was one of the most respected athletes of his era, with titles like Mr. Universe and historic appearances. But he never competed at the 1977 Mr. Olympia, as some of those mistaken sources claim. This confusion likely came from a mix of factors: his long-lasting fame, name repetition, and a lack of digitized records from some older competitions. But let's be clear, after rising to international fame in the sport, Earl stepped away from the competitive stage by the end of the 70s, shifting his focus toward a career in film. This ongoing error highlights an important issue: the responsibility we have when sharing information online. When stories are told inaccurately, the legacy of someone like Maynard can be distorted, and that's a disservice to the decades of hard work, perseverance, and trailblazing that he represents. That's why this chapter exists, to honor the truth and set the record straight. Earl Maynard isn't a 90s athlete. He's an icon of the decades before, a man who helped shape classic bodybuilding and inspired future generations. The mix-up doesn't erase his value, but it does need to be corrected every time it shows up. Earl Maynard's story isn't just about muscle, medals, or fame. It's about real transformation. From a frail, sick kid with limited opportunities in Barbados, he became a globally respected name. Sure, his body changed, but what really carried him that far was what he built inside: discipline, grit, and a clear purpose. He never limited himself to just one thing. He shined in bodybuilding, earned titles, faced off with giants in the wrestling ring, acted in Hollywood, and later wrote and directed his own stories. And even with all those accomplishments, Earl never lost his humility or his connection to his roots. Quite the opposite. He stayed grounded, present, and continues to inspire the next generation. Today, living in Barbados, he spends his time training, teaching, filming, and planting seeds in his community. His life is a powerful reminder that it doesn't matter where you come from. It matters where you want to go and how hard you're willing to work to get there. He faced prejudice, financial struggle, and serious health issues, but he never let any of that define his future. Maybe you're going through a rough time right now, feeling like your current situation is far from the life you dream of. But if Earl's story taught us anything, it's that you don't need to be huge to start. You just need to start. And little by little, with consistency, the transformation will come. Workout after workout, decision after decision, your best version starts to take shape. If this story inspired you in any way, hit that like button. It really helps the channel keep bringing you more content like this. And if you want to support us even more, consider becoming a channel member. It's a simple gesture that makes a big difference in helping us keep these amazing stories coming. Also, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any upcoming videos on the greatest legends in bodybuilding and their incredible journeys. And of course, drop a comment below. What part of Earl's story hit you the hardest? We'd really love to hear how it spoke to you. And if you're in the mood for more inspiration, check out the video linked in the description and on the card. We tell the story of another legend who broke barriers and left his mark on the world. See you there.